Hello everyone, this is Miss Van Hook, and in this video we're going to look at how to graph using the TAILS method. Each of these letters stands for an important component of our graph. The T in TAILS stands for title. Your title tells what the graph is showing, and it needs to be specific. Your IV and DV should be incorporated in it, and often formatting it as a question or a statement of the effect of the IV on the DV is an effective way to create your title. The A in TAILS stands for axes, and that refers to, on a graph, mathematically you maybe remember how there's an x-axis and a y-axis. The x-axis is the one that is horizontal, that always goes along the horizon, like the direction my mouse is moving. The IV is always going to be found on the x-axis. The y-axis, the vertical one, you can see my mouse moving vertically right now, that's where the DV goes. So sometimes Google Sheets will get confused, or if you're graphing by hand, you might get confused. This helps you remember which of your variables should go on which axis. The I stands for interval. This basically refers to the space between the little tick marks. If you're making a graph by hand, you have to make sure they stay the same. If you're graphing in Google Sheets, typically it's going to calculate that interval for you. L stands for labels, and that means the axes, so that X and Y axis, must be clearly labeled and include units when appropriate. What do I mean by a unit? That might be like if you measure distance, you would need to specify, did you measure in miles or meters or feet or centimeters? So your label must be clearly labeled. You can't just put the information in the correct axis. We must know what that information is. And finally, the S stands for scale. That idea is, if you're graphing by hand, that you're using all of your graph paper. You're spreading things out. So maybe instead of having your data go by 20s for your interval, you make them go by 5 so that your data is spread out. Again, Google Sheets will often do this for you. Okay, let's look at a few examples. This graph is properly labeled using TAILS. We see the title. We notice it's specific. I could figure out what this study was about. How does air pressure, that must be their independent variable, impact basketball bounce height? It's their dependent variable. Their IVs down here, we notice they have a label, what these numbers mean, and the unit, PSI, pounds per square inch. Their DV, bounce height, is here with a label for centimeters, and notice that their data is spread out. The interval, I notice that every 1, 2, 3 tick marks is worth 2. Again, Google Sheets did this for them, but if they had graphed this by hand, they'd want to make sure that each of these big tick marks was always 2 psi apart, that it didn't change by an unequal number. And over here, each major tick mark goes up by 25. Okay? Here's what this might look like with a bar graph. Now notice there is only going to be up here, there are only numbers here, so the interval doesn't really apply, but they have a label, no unit needed because these are categories, what kind of music elective people have. Here there are numbers, and by saying percent, that is like the unit. It's telling us what these numbers are, their percentage. And their title is not a question this time. It is simply the impact of music class enrollment on visual memory. IV, DV. IV on the x-axis, DV on the y. Okay? Now some of you might have a pie graph, and the idea of scale and interval, that won't really play a role, but you for sure need a title. How often do 6th graders chew gum on average? And notice here we can read what the categories are, ones who never chew gum, 4 or more times a day, 2 to 3 times a day, once a day, and we can see the number of people that responded and the percentage that that represents. Here we can see that it's simply 1.6%. We can't see the number, but I think that's how Google Sheets formatted it. Okay, when you're making your graphs, you want to make sure you include all those tails components. And if you use Google Sheets, it will often do a lot of that for you when you properly format your data table to make your chart.